All right, we're back. Round 6 is ready to go. So we don't need to waste any time chatting. Let's do deck lists, and we'll get into the rounds. So we have Nathan Steuer, Red-Black Death Shadow, undefeated in Legacy, undefeated in Modern after one round. This is an effectively an 8 Death Shadow deck. Scourge of the Skycleaves, a new card that represents the other half of Death Shadow's business. And we've got some removal, some haste creatures, some discard.
And a really cool card.
Yeah.
All Knight's Whisper.
Yeah,
love that card. Love it so much.
Not exactly a staple of the format. Knight's Whisper shows up. So, and then Nathan Stewart's going to be playing against Levi Sprung with Green-White Titan. And so this is, Reclaimer, Dryad of the Elysian Fields, Primeval Titan, and 2 Valakutes in a deck that actually doesn't play red in the main deck.
Wow.
Or have any mountains.
That's gutsy.
My mistake. There is a Sacred Foundry. There is a mountain in the deck. However, Valakut requires more than 5, so we're only triggering it when Dryad is in play.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Yeah, this is cool. This deck has popped up in the last month or so, I would say, maybe a little longer, but there have been some articles written about it. The only red cards are Boils out of the sideboard, which are obviously not going to be relevant here. But there are a bunch of Celestial Purges in the board, which Levi is going to need, as Death Shadow deck can get on you pretty quick. So
I can imagine.
If the players are ready.
So have you had a chance to play this Green-White Titan list at all?
I played against it.
Okay.
And it is, in some respects, it has a couple different routes, but it is similar to the Amulet Titan decks, where if you can kill all the Primeval Titans, or at least if you can kill the Primeval Titans as they come out, then the deck stalls out somewhat. But it is not as reliant on them, I would say.
Okay. One of the things that's pretty interesting is, since the Dryad is kind of important, it is a 2/4.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not confident Nathan has much more than Bolt as removal. Maybe Fatal Pushes? I haven't had a chance to look. I'm doing so right now, but I'm curious if you remember seeing pushes.
I did not look too carefully at the... I looked kind of at the
primary. There's 3 Fatal Pushes, but still not the easiest to turn on anyway, so... Interesting.
And Nathan here with 1 land hand, but a couple cantrips. And as soon as... Now, so this... If you haven't seen this deck play out, Scourge of the... Whatever it's called.
Skyclave. Just assume it's Skyclave. It's always something of the Skyclave.
Scourge of the Skyclaves doesn't require such a low life total to get started as Death Shadow. It just requires both players to be under 20. So as soon as Levi fetches, this Scourge can come into play.
To be honest, I think Scourge of the Skyclave is such a powerful card, and I'm so shocked that it's taken so long to be adopted into these decks, because look, it's so cool.
Yeah, it is very neat. And in some ways, it's easier to manage than Death Shadow, as it takes much less effort to get it on the board in the first place.
I will say, in an Uro world, it's a little more annoying, which we don't have to worry about today, but at least not in this match. But Uro is, I played it in Historic for a little while, and you really have to do some thinking. You have to go, can my opponent go above 20?
Sure. So Nathan has some choices here. He has got, Bomat Courier, leaving up Lightning Bolt, or Scourge can just come into play here. And it's going to be the Scourge, which is going to come in. And we're talking about this big, huge, scary threat, and it's a 1/1.
Oh, just you wait.
But sometimes it doesn't take too long. And there is the Dryad.
This is the second Dryad, because we actually Inquisition the first one.
That's right. And Levi makes the extra land drop. And the ability for the Dryad to you can make extra land drops, but also your lands can tap for any colored mana. So this fetch land, I believe, can tap for mana without having to sacrifice. So Levi can preserve his life total a little bit except Nathan draws Fatal Push, so this Dryad is goner.
Yeah, and just looking at Levi's deck list like very quickly, my brain was focused on like kill the Dryads, knowing that that's the only way that Levi can win with Valakut. The Dryads have to have a huge target on their back, so I definitely am on board with Nathan's plan here. But now it's time to get some damage done.
Yeah, well, we saw Levi tap his fetch land for white mana, not an interaction that occurs every day. And the Scourge actually eats a Path to Exile, with Nathan fetching out what looked like his last basic, but that's probably all he needs. His deck doesn't exactly run expensive spells, although Scourge actually does have a kicker, which in total costs 7 mana, but can actually put a hurting on the opponent's life total.
Speaking of a hurting.
Yeah. Okay, so Primeval Titan comes down. Now, this deck, if you're used to your Primeval Titan decks in Modern being Amulet decks, this works a little differently in that we're not as often giving haste, and our lands aren't coming to play untapped from Amulet, but, well, as you can see, we're starting with a couple zombies there. And if and Nathan's going to pack it in. If the Dryad had been alive, we might have seen Valakuts come down there instead of zombies, but either way.
Yeah, and I can see that being really tough for Nathan, right? Nathan actually dealt with 2 Dryads there, and wasn't able to really put a huge clock. And by the time all that had settled, Levi was like, "Oh, okay, well, how about this 6/6?"
Yeah, and
and these zombies for free.
Primeval Titan is so strong and just puts so much an impact on the board, even if you kill it, which Nathan couldn't do anyway.
Castle Garenbrig contributes to this, right? Yes, like a ton.
It does, certainly. So we saw Nathan has Blood Moons in the sideboard, which are likely going to be good. Let's go ahead and take a look at what Levi's got. In the board here, we see a play set, and I don't know that I've seen too often, when you see actually Celestial Purge as a 4 of in the board.
Nathan brought in Feed the Swarms. Unless I'm going absolutely crazy. Well, I guess it's another way to deal with Dryad.
Yeah.
Well, in both ways. You get it as a creature or an enchantment.
Yeah, and it reduces your life total for the Death Shadows and such. That's actually
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
But we see, so Celestial Purge is great for Levi because not only does it kill both styles of Death Shadow creature, it also can kill the Blood Moons. Celestial Purge is going to be real nice.
I have no idea why, but the very first time I saw Celestial Purge, in my head, it was a converted mana cost of white. And now it's not. And so even to this day, I still have to remind myself it's 1 and a white. Cool.
I'm sure everybody has cards where they read them at 1 value and then didn't realize there was something else. Okay, so I remember way back in the day, I wasn't, playing then, but I remember some of the older Arabian Nights cards, the colorless costs were so hard to see just because of the font they were printed in that they looked like it was just the actual colored cost. Well, maybe not for a lot of people, but for myself, that tripped me up a couple times. So we're seeing here Nathan consulting his opponent's deck list before deciding how he wants to progress this game, but having access to a basic swamp, a Thoughtseize, and the Blood Moon for turn 3 if he can hit the land drops. This is a potentially strong hand. It's not going to push through infinite damage right away, but well, I guess so. Nathan actually has a reasonable choice here: turn 1 Thoughtseize or fetch for red, play Swift Spear, and then worry about the Thoughtseize later. And it looks like that's what he's going to go with.
Okie dokie. This is an aggressive hand.
Yeah, and Levi on a double mulligan.
Oh, there's the 3rd land for the Blood Moon. Gonna come in handy.
Nathan's really coming out of the gate strong here. Double Swift Spear plus a Thoughtseize into a Blood Moon that Levi's likely going to have a hard time beating if he can survive long enough to actually mount any kind of threat here. And we see...
he does have the basic planes.
Well, that is significant.
So Nathan can take either the Dryad or the Explorer. What are you leaning towards?
I think I would take the Explorer because the Blood Moon will come down before the Dryad, and then Nathan is stuck with no green mana and unable to cast it.
Right.
But Nathan takes the Dryad, which is certainly the more threatening of the two cards. And here's the Explorer, and a Valakut comes down. So Nathan knows that was one of the freshly drawn cards. And this Blood Moon's going to come down, and that's going to be the end of, well, Levi's now playing mono red. At least for...
Well, we do know that Levi has a Plains in hand, so that does mean Celestial Purge at any point is a draw.
Yes.
A good draw.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not they will have time for that.
Yeah.
With these 2 bolts in hand.
Yeah.
Likely.
Celestial Purge even is going to have to kill a Swift Spear. It's not even able to kill a Blood Moon because Levi is looking dead on the board, I think.
Yeah, so we got 1, 2, and we got 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 6.
12.
Yeah, it's 12 damage.
Nathan Steuer, I don't know how I feel about this. We came to see Death Shadow, Scourge the Sky King, and he takes down game 2 without seeing either one of them.
We saw mono red, basically.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead, as the players move towards game 3, let's go ahead and look at Nathan Stewar's route through the tournament so far. You can see here, we already know he went undefeated in Legacy, playing, we didn't know, it was 4-color Snoko, and he beat Sultai Hogak, Mono Red Tempo, Temur Delver, and Azorius Control. So he played one of the top 2 represented decks in Legacy and did beat the other one of the heavily played decks in Tony Walcolt's playing Temur Delver. And then in Modern, he played against Electro Balance in round 5. How much do you know about that deck? That's not a deck that I would imagine Nathan played against too many times just because nobody really has.
That deck to me is similar to kind of Storm decks. Like if you love that deck and you want to keep playing it, you'll play it at tournaments like this. Yes. It's never going to be a meta call in my opinion, but it's cool. It does some fun things for sure. It
is cool. I tried playing it, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. I loaded it up and played a few leagues, and it is cool, and I lost a lot, and I was like, I mean, that's usually kind of my niche, is being cool and losing a lot, but even I managed to get off of it just because it has really cool, really powerful stuff if it all works, but it doesn't always. So if the players are ready for game 3, let's get down there. Otherwise, maybe we can look at Levi's tournament path. Here it is. Played mono green ramp in Legacy. And mono green ramp.
And this was the actual mono green ramp list, right? This had green in it.
I don't know. I don't remember which.
I think so.
There were several mislabeled Eldrazi decks as mono green ramp. I don't know if this was one of them or not, but. I think it was, yeah. Beating Reanimator, that with green ramp, that's, I would say, probably somewhat unlikely. Did actually play against Lucas Hittel playing Elves and won. Lucas Hittel was the mill player that we watched win last round.
Right.
And now, up against, as you can see, up against Nathan Steuer in round 6. And here we go for game 3.
So it looks like Levi might have played the other green-white ramp player last round. It was like green-white lands or something.
Sure.
It was like sort of similar.
Yeah, it might be very similar. All right. Nathan's hand looks just fine. A top deck Blood Moon this game will cripple him on black mana. This actually...
Oh,
there's that
aspect. Whoa, use your powers for good over there.
I know, I kind of wasted that one, didn't I? I should save that for my own games.
But we've got time. We can draw some fetch lands. Oh, interesting. So Nathan choosing to cast Thoughtseize on turn 1.
Yeah, so changing things up from how the previous game developed. And Levi on a Molta 6 this game loses his Dryad. Nathan identifies that as one of the easier ways for Levi to handle Blood Moon.
Oh, sort of rewarded here for, well, not rewarded necessarily, but we do Nathan does get to go Swiss Spear into Inquisition now. Though I guess the call can be cast in response, right? If it's an instant.
Right.
So might not be working out for us. We'll see.
So with the Blood Moon looming, Levi, for his own sake, hopefully fetches a basic forest here off of this foothills. Nathan going to check again what Levi has access to with this Eldarmor's Call. This looks like, we'll see how this game plays out. This looks like a game where...
what does the call say, actually? Sorry, I realize, what does...
So it's green, white, instant, and you can search for a creature and put it in your hand.
Okay, so he can't get a creature... Levi can't get a creature that's below CMC 3.
Right, so he cannot get a replacement Dryad.
Okay, that's what I was trying to think about there.
So it looks like Titan was pulled up and Purge goes away. Which is the answer to the Blood Moon. That's pretty significant. I was starting to say, this may be a game where Nathan actually bolts himself to enable his Death Shadows to come into play, as right now they're stranded.
Right. So let's say Nathan doesn't draw a way to get a swamp, which we didn't. How confident are you that this Blood Moon is lights out? Oh, well.
As in, can I play Blood Moon right now and expect to win this game?
With no black source? Yeah.
I would be very afraid of doing that.
Okay.
Especially since there's a forest in hand, a forest in play, a plains in hand. Yeah, that seems pretty scary. And so, there we go.
Look at that.
Bolt ourselves, eat 4 damage, including the pain from the land, willingly, and now we have a pair of 4/4s.
And this works out better for Nathan, right? Because now next turn, now that the Blood Moon plan next turn doesn't feel as scary.
Right. So this looks pretty well set up. Now, the card I added to my Modern deck yesterday was Explosives in the sideboard, which would be excellent for Levi right now. Does not have it.
I think it's Blood Moon time. And notably no white source after this for Levi.
Right. I mean, there is... I believe the window that's open, that Nathan has open, is Levi's hand. So I think there is a plains in the hand.
Oh, sorry. I didn't even...
But Levi's at 3. This is the end of the game. If he doesn't have... Okay, kill the Blood Moon. Yep, dead. So, yeah, the pressure from getting those shadows online. So that's... If Nathan had not bolted himself, those shadows would have taken a couple more turns to come down, and maybe Levi could have gotten a hold of that game. But the self bolt is enough to give those shadows, get them started. And 4/4s, I mean, that's a creature that can easily be 10/10 sometimes, but 4/4 is enough to be a significant threat.
Yeah, that was. I assume that is how Nathan wants to draw that matchup, right? Like the green-white list does kind of feel a little greedy, like playing a win condition without any mountains is a little greedy, and it looked like Nathan had a plan. Nathan was like, either punish the Dryads, which we saw Inquisition draw Thoughtseizes almost every time, and then go after the lands two turns later, and that happened in both, I believe, game 2 and game 3. So it looks like Nathan has a plan to keep being undefeated.
Yeah, Nathan Steuer 6-0, good for him. So we're trying to get the backup match set up here. And so maybe it seems a little greedy to have those Valakutes in that deck, but I mean, if you draw them opening hand, okay, they're coming to play tap land, you don't really have much going on turn 1 anyway. And then having, the possibility of tutoring and winning outside of combat is, I've been on the losing side of it before. It definitely matters sometimes. I think that's true for a lot of different decks, that if you can just, like the Legacy Hogak deck we saw this morning, generally you're winning through combat, but you have the artifact where you can sacrifice the mill, so you have the backdoor plan of winning through milling that comes up occasionally.
Do you think a deck like that would do better without open deck lists?
Probably. So let's go ahead. We can continue that conversation while we move into the match. We'll see what we've got going on here. We have Ricardo Sánchez, my boy, 4-color Omnath Warp against Justin Brickman's Simic Nexus deck. So your question, okay, and this game ends with Ricardo winning, so they'll be going to a third game. So we'll come back to your question in a minute, but let's go ahead and look at. Can we bring up the full slide of Ricardo Sanchez's deck, followed by?
I wonder if Ricardo changed anything.
Yeah, but I would like to see the actual slide if we have it available, because we're not just peering at the sideboard here. Okay, we don't have it. Do we have Justin's deck? Okay, we don't have the deck list because this is a backup match we just moved into. Okay, bear with us for a moment. We'll see if we can get that sorted out. In the meantime, you can look at Ricardo Sanchez's deck. This looks like he has made some changes from last month when he won trial number 4. There's a Supreme Verdict in the deck now. There's an Hour of Promise. Neither one of those were present before. There's Timely Enforcements.
The Hour of Promise is really interesting because when we covered that event, the biggest thing we saw was the Time Warps or Hour of Promise.
Right, and now Ricardo, let's see.
There's no Time Warps.
Oh no, Ricardo Sanchez.
I don't see him.
There are no Time Warps. Get Ricardo Sanchez out of here. I don't even want to look at this list. Bring up Justin Brickman's deck. No time. You abandon the Time Warps. Oh, you're dead to me. All right, Justin Brickman's Simic Nexus.
These are like Time Warps. These are like build your own Time Warps.
Yeah, these are more expensive Time Warps. In 3 copies of Nexus of Fate. I've seen a number of modern decks that have 1 copy of Nexus of Fate. 3 we're in on it. With Wilderness Reclamations, we have some Planeswalkers, and we have Game 3 ready to go.
Perfect.
So,
but we are watching from Ricardo's side. Are you going to be okay with that?
I guess I'll have to soldier on. I'm not
looking like a nice hand for Ricardo, by the way.
We're supposed to be, neutral, unbiased commentators, right? Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But Ricardo Sanchez, Justin Brickman, both 4-1, both playing late game, powerful modern decks here. And with the mirror match, I mean, this is a match that probably could last a little while. We know Justin Brickman went well into the clock last round.
Ricardo's hand is set up to do the things that they want with all of the different colored mana pips.
Right. And Ricardo chooses not to play Red and 6 on turn 2, instead holds up Mystical Dispute. And let's see if that proves to be a good decision. Growth Spiral from Justin. Disputable, but do you hold it here? Oh, no. We're going to fire it off.
Yeah, even in Standard, I was so confused on whether to dispute those Growth Spirals.
I think it takes a lot of experience, and I don't think I got this far, to be confident in your decision regarding that choice.
So it looks like Ricardo could go Uro here or go back to Ren and 6.
Right. That is definitely the choice. And unlike the last decision where he acted quickly, this one he's given some thought to.
So I think if the plan is Uro, then the field is the right land to play, because then you're holding up Steam Vents if you need to. Maybe, I guess, so Ricardo wasn't sure about Shocking.
So the decision is to go with Field of Ruin pass. I am a little surprised by that. So both players, since Ricardo has nothing available aside from Field of Ruin, I'm assuming he's going to use his here as well. And both players will end up with 2 basics in play. Now, Ricardo's previous version of the deck only had 2 basics, but both players are unlikely to have. Oh, there's actually quite a few basics in this version, in this build of the deck. And actually, his other deck didn't have Field of Ruin either.
Right, and I think that was probably not at the Time Warp. Like the Hour deck means you can be a little bit more selective with your one of lands.
So we see here Ricardo untapping with 2 copies of Omnath and then Uro Ren and 6. Now, there are options here. It can be either Uro, and if it resolves, then you can also play Ren and 6, or you just go with Omnath.
Yeah, one thing I've thought that's kind of different for this game for Ricardo is he's made a lot of options to pass turn, and he doesn't actually have any interaction.
Right. I personally, I'm surprised last turn.
We're doing it again?
Ricardo chose to just use Field of Ruin instead of doing anything. Now, Maybe he's just trying to represent counter magic to prevent Justin from doing anything. Justin, go ahead. Cranks off Archmage Charm to just draw 2 cards.
My fear is that once Ricardo's bluff is called, will he be able to deploy all his threats?
Right. We're setting up the Omnath into fetch land generates enough mana to cast everything, but that would have been true anyway, even if the first Omnath had already been played, and it would force something from Justin. I guess there is a fear of if you tap out and then Justin untaps and plays Wilderness Reclamation, it could potentially be very hard for Ricardo to fight on even terms the rest of the game.
Right. Yeah, I guess my biggest fear is that the Simic Nexus deck has a lot more interaction than we have access to. And so I just feel like just chilling
is dangerous. Yeah, I agree with you.
A little dangerous. But
we saw Ricardo actually tap all his lands at the end of Justin's turn and then untap them, perhaps trying to represent there being some sort of interaction there or some sort of incident there that he was just choosing not to cast instead of not actually having anything. And then the drawn mana leak leads to Ricardo again choosing not to do anything because now he actually has something to hold mana up for. Another card that was so Ricardo's made a lot of changes to his deck list over the last month.
Well, to me, Ricardo just switched decks.
Sure, I mean that is certainly the payoff has changed, and that probably influences the way the rest of the whole deck is built. So yeah.
It's funny though because when we watched that tournament, at least I had concluded that the Time Warp version looked way more fun and therefore cooler. But it seems like Ricardo's not agreed with us.
Right. Now, Ricardo cannot wait too much longer because I really don't think you want to let the Nexus of Fate player get to 7 mana because then there's the fear that if you don't do anything, they'll just cast Nexus in your turn. You have to react, and they can untap and do whatever they want. Ren 6 comes down here. Okay, Mana Leak is available.
So this is that same fear, though. If you leak this, if Ricardo leaks this, and then Justin just untaps and Nexuses.
Right.
So we're back in this waiting. Or are we going to go for the Omnath?
Oh, that seems awfully risky.
Oh, no, okay. This is...
Even Uro here without another land, so... I feel like Ricardo needs to pass the turn now. I think he's given up his window of being able to cast spells without being punished, and now it's no longer safe.
Looks like Ricardo agrees with you.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough spot to get out of. And without being too critical, I feel like this is a spot that Ricardo got himself into by not committing his mana earlier.
Oh, Justin did not play a 7th land.
Okay, that is probably very comforting for Ricardo. As the Nexus of Fate being kind of the key card to be afraid of here. And Ricardo is now recurring with Mystic Sanctuary. The Mystical Dispute goes from the graveyard to the top of the deck and into the hand, and now has double counter magic available. Granted, they're both tax encounters.
Yes, but when your opponent is missing their land draw, even if it is the 6th one, I think that is still going to matter.
Right.
We can go get our planes.
Yeah, if the 7th mana had been on board there for Justin, then he could just tap out there for Nexus of Fate. Ricardo has to counter it, or doesn't have to, but is probably incentivized to, and then Justin can untap and do whatever he wants. So, what are we going to end up seeing here? We saw...
Oh my.
So, as an attempt to limit the mana... Justin really needs a 7th land because Wilderness Reclamation, and 3 to pay for. Oh, there it is. So
it brings a bonus card, bonus cryptic
right.
command along with it.
So was that Commander or Archmage Charm? I didn't see. I know both were in the graveyard.
Oh, I thought it was command, but I don't see the charm anymore, so I think I was wrong.
There's Field of the Dead in this deck. Ricardo's changed like 20 cards in this deck. You're right. This is hardly even similar.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it does have, 40-ish similar cards, but I really do think they're just two separate decks doing two separate things.
Yeah. I mean, 20 cards different is enough to easily be a completely different deck. And here we have something. We have Cryptic Command, which is, I guess, drawing. If it was Archmage Charm, which I think it was that went back, that's now in hand and castable.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right.
And Justin can just cast that here. Chooses not to. So he doesn't want to draw the cards. He wants to have protection for his Reclamation. There it is. And Ricardo's now in a rough spot. This Omnath needs to resolve. If Ricardo even gets another turn.
The crazy part about this, while Justin was doing all this, is Justin just has 6 cards in hand.
Yeah.
Oh, and now these pay X mana counter spells are not looking hot. Not looking good. So how long do you play this kind of situation out for?
I mean, quite a while. There's nothing here representing any sort of infinite nonsense. Okay, well.
What? Well, hello?
That is now changed. But there are 3 Nexus in this deck, and we don't see Search for Escanta or anything like we saw in Standard or Historic when this deck was a real nuisance. Jace, on the other hand, can do a lot, and we're basically going to rapidly arrive at a point where even if Justin isn't able to chain a bunch of Time Warps together, his lead is going to become significant. As we see, a Factor Fiction.
This is with the Mystical on the stack.
Yes, it is. So that's interesting. So the Factor Fiction is countered.
And the Cryptic is back on top.
Right, and then Justin will untap.
Nexus?
You better believe it. No, 8 mana. Maybe not. Maybe we're just floating one.
Okay. We've already done the untap, though. I thought. Okay.
All right, so Justin continues on. Yeah, so this is getting... Our deck gets... Because if you haven't played much with Nexus of Fate before, the deck gets more and more dense with Time Walks as you go because the other cards are being drawn out of the deck. And the Nexus of Fates keep shuffling back in.
I think my favorite thing about this deck is it plays Mystic Sanctuary, which doesn't work with Nexus at all.
Right.
But yet it's actually an amazing card in this deck. I think that's so funny to me.
And here we have the Factor Fiction, which we
returned it. We
Sanctuary back Factor Fiction, and then we're firing that off after drawing two Jace. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
I just noticed that Justin has 1 green source.
Yeah.
After all this. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I have scooped already. If I was playing this match.
I would certainly not have.
I guess the field is a reason not to, but.
Because Ricardo can just untap, play Omnath, draw Time Warp, and then be right back.
We don't have Time Warp.
Oh, we don't.
We don't have Time Warp.
I'm just digging in on Ricardo for leaving his previous build of the deck.
Poor Ricardo came here to play some Magic with some new cards, like Omnath. It's so new.
Yeah.
New card. Actually, it's kind of insane just looking at. I just was thinking about Ricardo's deck, and a lot of the cards are printed in the last 2 years, a significant amount of them.
Look, you were going to concede, and it's now Ricardo's turn, and he's going to attack and kill Jace.
Okay. Are we?
Maybe not.
Okay. I think we still have that Archmage Charm somewhere.
Archmage Charm steal a zombie? Is that really what we're going to see?
Well, there's 3 blue. Yep. Oh. Gain control of target non-land permanent. Is it CMC 1 or less?
I think it might just be 1.
Well, no. We wouldn't be able to target the zombie then.
You're right. So it's probably 1 or less.
Okay.
I'm not going to look up the card, but I'm going to default to you probably being right.
Yeah, it's 1 or less.
The game would not allow this to happen otherwise. Yeah, so 1 or less. Okay, so 1 token is stolen. Ricardo makes a new token, so now we're still 1 up on tokens, but 1 is summoning sick. Jace is not being threatened. Field of the Dead does not contribute to Omnath being... Are we not casting Omnath?
No.
All right. And there may be still a known counter in Justin's hand.
I mean, there's got to be a cryptic still.
Yeah.
I only see 1 cryptic. Oh no, there's 2 in the yard. There are 3 at one point. So you have to assume there's 1 floating around somewhere. You don't just lose a cryptic along the way. So, okay. As much as we think Ricardo, the Time Warp would have been better in this exact scenario, what is Ricardo drawing to? Why are you still playing?
Well, let's see.
Like, I'm not teasing. Like, I'm just.
I understand. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of the scenario. Like, this is a matchup that I played with the Time Warp version of Ricardo's deck, and I found it hard anyway. Because a lot of your cards aren't well suited to deal with the Cryptic Command, instant speed deck. And this is almost even worse because this deck has, I mean, how much mana does Justin have at the end step? 25?
Justin doesn't have anything cool, right? There's no expansion explosions or anything like that. So
looking at the deck list right now,
I don't think I can cast it, I assume.
But I don't believe so. I think it's just a straight blue-green
deck. He
can
make a really big Shark Typhoon.
He could.
There's 1 main deck Shark Typhoon.
Oh, he does. Okay, I was going to say, I don't think he needs it.
I think
yeah, I think this is generally a sign that one player is going to give it up. Ricardo does concede to Justin Brickman's Nexus of Fate with Jace and Uro. Justin's going to be seeing so many cards every turn that Ricardo is... I mean, yeah, like you're saying, if we can't figure out what he needs to draw, and he's not getting the chance to draw any cards anyway because he's not getting any turns, then there's just really no way out. I do feel like Ricardo could have tried to force development a little bit more early on. Maybe he gets punished and loses anyway, but as it is, he tried to delay the confrontation, and he delayed it so long that he just wasn't in a spot to be able to even really fight.
I'm worried that the mana leak draw ended up basically like Ricardo was passing turn without any interaction. And I think we got to a turn where Ricardo's like, okay, I have to play a spell now. And then we drew the mana leak. So I felt like it gave us some sort of like, okay, well, maybe I could go back to this plan of having interaction, even though I didn't, but now I do. And I wonder if it like tricked us.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that turn that he drew the mana leak, he was basically forced to play a strong card, and the mana leak gave him an excuse to not do it. And it turned out he dug himself a bigger hole. So Ricardo Sánchez goes down to Justin Brickman, and Nathan Steuer wins his match to stay undefeated. So if we have the view of the tournament field, let's go ahead and bring it up. So we see one of our undefeated tables is actually still playing. And we had Nathan Steuer go to 6-0. I don't know how many undefeated players we still had left. I'm not sure if table 3 was a match of 5-0s or not. But here
I'm not sure.
Richard Neal with Electro Balance loses his second match in a row, I think, to Death Shadow for the second time in a row.
Yes.
So that is unfortunate. He went 4-0 in Legacy and is now 0-2 against specifically Rakdos Death Shadow.
Yep. Looks like we're still waiting. There's another Boros aggro deck not finished playing. Tron on the board. I like it.
Tron takes the win, you're right. Dominic Harvey. Oh, you know what? These Boros aggro decks, I don't know that we figured out what they were. Are these are the equipment hammer decks, maybe?
Miranda's isn't. Okay. I did look it up and I lost it, but they're basically like mono white decks. They have like Heliod and such.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. At least Miranda's did. I don't know how similar the other one was.
Leonardo's, I wonder, might be the hammer deck.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and see what else we have on the next page. We just watched Ricardo Sánchez losing to Justin Brickman in 3 games. Brandon Burton with Infect takes down the Tron deck. That's not a shocking result.
It is not, sadly. Tron has a lot of those matchups now that I think about it. Oh, well.
In fact, another Infect deck losing to Mono Red aggro in the hands of Zan Syed. That one I can have no trouble believing either, as especially if with a lot of the red decks being prowess decks now and having Lava Darts. Lava Dart is very, very bad for Infect.
I don't see anything else super notable. Okay. Looks like those Titan Shifts, some of those Titan Shift decks are doing well and some are not.
Right. Catherine Savino wins her match with it this round against Amulet Titan. So Titans on both sides, but not exactly a mirror. All right, so here we are back. Couple matches still playing. 2 rounds left in Modern. If you had to pick, what deck would you like to see next round?
Tron. I already picked.
You already picked. All right. Well, we'll see if we can make that happen. And if you're at home, well, hopefully we can randomly just guess. I mean, I guessed the card that was coming off the top of Nathan's deck.
You did. Blood Moon. That was a good call.
So maybe without people even telling us what they're going to do, we can guess what deck they want to see, and we'll see if we can put it up for them next round. And if it's not Tron, well, we're going to make everyone else happy. And if you're not happy, oh, well, we'll live with it.
Okay.
Anyway, stick around. We'll be right back.